Time again for another installment of The Basics, and on today's show I'm going to clear up questions that some of you have about time locations and objectives, because I seem to be getting a lot of questions in regards to how some of these cards work with affiliations like the Borg and the Federation and whatnot. So I'm going to answer those questions on today's show. So let's get going, shall we? So basically, time locations and objectives both came out with the First Contact expansion. And I've never been a big fan myself of time locations because they add more to the gameplay that kind of slows the game down. But basically, when the time location came out, because as you know from the movie First Contact, it has to deal with time travel and stopping First Contact, the Montana Missile Complex was the main time location, and what this would do, as the card says, plays on table, seed Phoenix beneath this location from outside the game. Borg player may download Stop First Contact. Once Phoenix has taken off, or Vulcan lander has landed here, nullifies Stop First Contact. Native to this timeline is Zephram Cochrane, Lily Sloan, Phoenix, Vulcan lander, Salkar Sevek, Tashana, and Kathleen Tunnell. Basically, it was its own little side mission for anyone playing the Borg. And if you're playing against the Federation, they would have to try to make sure that First Contact went ahead. In later expansions, after more and more time locations came out, of which I don't have, this doorway came out, the Guardian of Forever. Plays on Planet Gateway, limit 1. Once per turn, one or more personnel present may time travel to a time location in this quadrant, or may return here from there with any of owner's other personnel present. Or plays once each turn to nullify any card that is closing the Guardian, or to draw up to 4 cards. If your archaeology or anthropology personnel just time travel back to Guardian, place doorway out of play. So that doorway brings more time locations into play, and it really, in my opinion, slows down the game, because if you have a deck that's dependent on time locations, it gets a bit messy because there's a lot more to do, and your turn just grows and grows and grows. As I said, I'm not a big fan of time locations. They can be fun, but I've never really utilized them because of the amount of time they take. Now, when it comes to objectives, and I have been asked about my Borg deck, of why I don't really include any objectives in there, when a lot of the objectives that came out in First Contact were specifically for the Borg, and some of them, like Assimilate Planet, you can score bonus points. Now, that being said, as I mentioned before, my own Borg deck is set up to destroy my opponent, and I have thrown in there those missions that can be attempted by any crew, because the objective of my deck is to score 2 missions worth of points and then eliminate my opponent before he even finishes his first one. This works in contact with the dilemmas that are seated under the missions. But there are objectives, especially in later expansions, that have come out for almost every affiliation. So for example, you have for Cardassia, and this helps your Cardassian personnel, especially if your legate is present. And you can score 15 bonus points for helping out Cardassia Prime. You have Construct Starship, and if you have matching engineers and you have an outpost or a headquarters present, you can do that. You have Assign Mission Specialists, Assign Support Personnel, Ferengi Conference. You have things like Open Diplomatic Relations, and this is during your doorway phase on your seat, and it also helps when you have that treaty card that's like a 3-way treaty. It kind of does that, but in a different way. You have objectives for founders, so impersonate captive. For Romulans, you have prepare the prisoner, so it all deals with away teams. You even have a couple for Kazon, and one that scores 10 extra bonus points, boarding party. So basically, your boarding pod may move to ram any ship present, and that personnel that you have on that pod, which is like a small shuttle, and I do have that boarding pod in my Kazon, go aboard the ship. So you've now placed Your objective is to, and what you've done is you've placed other personnel on that ship to try to take it over. And now you're battling on that ship, which leads me into commandeer ship. So the objectives are suited for different affiliations depending on the card, and this is what you have to be aware of when you're putting them in your deck. I don't use many objectives, if any, because again, it slows the game down, because it adds more facets to the game that are really not necessary in some cases, except for the cards that you score bonus points with. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them. Everybody should experiment while constructing a deck and playing in games to see if these cards work for them. If it enhances the game experience for you, great. If you feel it's slowing it down, then you can always take them back out of your deck and rebuild it. But yeah, they do a lot of different things, and they can be fun, but like I said, I've never been a big fan of time locations or objectives, and it's not for everybody. So you got to figure it out on your own. That's all for today. Have a great day.